Because his white moonlight couldn't endure the bitter cold beyond the frontier, Zhou Jinj personally sent me, pregnant, to the enemy nation as a hostage. He said, "A Ning has a weak constitution, but you are tough. You'll surely hold out until my army arrives at the border." The day the enemy's city fell, the first one he shielded was still the white moonlight on the horse beside him, completely unharmed, while I hung on the city wall, pierced through the heart by his arrow. When I smiled and cut the rope, falling into the abyss, that decisive and ruthless emperor vomited blood on the spot and jumped into the moat like a madman to retrieve my corpse. When we met again, as the empress of a neighboring nation, I looked at him coldly. "Your Majesty keeps staring at this empress. Who are you reminiscing about?" The imperial physician withdrew his hand from the pulse pillow, his wrinkled face blooming into a chrysanthemum with his smile. "Congratulations, your ladyship. Congratulations. It is a pregnancy pulse already over 2 months along, and the fetus is stable." My fingertips trembled slightly as I touched my flat belly. 2 months, that would be that rainy night at the military camp outside the city. A reward. I took off the jade bracelet from my wrist and handed it to the imperial physician, unable to suppress the upward curve of my lips. If Zhou Jinj knew, he would surely be overjoyed. He once said he would teach our child to ride the wildest horses and drink the strongest wine. The palace doors were suddenly flung open. Cold wind, mixed with snow flurries, swept in, dispersing the warm fragrance inside. Zhou Jinj wore a black cloak, his shoulders covered with accumulated snow. Behind him cowered a person, Jiang Ning, that little sister. He kept in a separate estate, for whom he'd immediately summon the imperial physician, even if she just scraped her finger. Jiang Ning's eyes were red-rimmed, clutching desperately at Zhou Jin's sleeve, her body trembling like chaff in a sieve. Before I could even get up, Zhou Jin's icy voice came crashing down. "Pack your things, we leave in half a shichen." I froze, my hand still resting protectively on my lower abdomen. "Where to?" Zhou Jinj didn't look at me. His gaze fell on Jiang Ning's pale face as he reached out to adjust her cloak. "Northern Yan has specifically demanded Aining as a hostage, or they'll massacre the city." My heart lurched. That was an enemy nation. The Northern Yan people were bloodthirsty and brutal. Fall into their hands, and even if you survived, you'd lose a layer of skin. "So what?" I stared at him. "You are going to send Jiang Ning?" Number Zhou Jinj finally turned his head, his dark eyes devoid of any warmth. "I am sending you." A buzzing sound rang in my ears. I almost thought I'd misheard. "Zhou Jinj, I am your wife. You are a tigress from a military family." He cut me off, his tone so matter-of-fact it was chilling. "You followed your father and brothers into battle since childhood. You are sturdy. But Aining is different. She has a heart condition and can't endure the harsh cold beyond the frontier. If she goes, she won't last 3 days." "I am sturdy." I laughed out loud, yet tears rolled down without warning. "So I deserve to be sent to my death, Zhou Jinj. I have. You have the foundation of the Shen family army." He waved his hand impatiently, not even giving me a chance to finish speaking. "I have already made arrangements. As long as you hold off Northern Yan for half a month, once my army reaches the border, I will definitely bring you back." Jiang Ning burst into tears and fell to her knees before me with a thud. "Sister, please save me. I really don't want to die." She clutched at my skirt hem, yet her nails dug viciously into my flesh through the fabric. I lowered my head and caught a flash of smugness in the depths of her eyes. I raised my foot and kicked her away. Scram. Zhou Jinj's expression changed drastically. He pulled Jiang Ning into his arms protectively and swung a backhanded slap at me. Slap. My cheek burned with searing pain, and the taste of blood spread through my mouth. "Shen Li." Jingji's gaze was sinister. "This is an imperial edict. For the sake of Great Zhou's people, you must go." I covered my face and looked at this man I had loved for 5 years. "For the sake of Great Zhou's people." "No, I am afraid it is just for that woman in his arms, isn't it, Zhou Jinj?" I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, my voice surprisingly calm. What if I told you I am pregnant? The air froze for an instant. Jiang Ning's crying also came to an abrupt halt. Zhou Jin's pupils contracted sharply, his gaze falling to my abdomen. For just a moment, I saw the panic in the depths of his eyes. But it was only for an instant. Jiang Ning suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed limply into Zhou Jinji's arms, her face pale as paper. Your Majesty, Ning hurts so much. Zhou Jinji's panic was instantly replaced by anxiety. He held Jiang Ning tightly, and when he looked up at me, only resolve remained in his eyes. Precisely because you are pregnant. He spoke word by word, yet each one was like a blade gouging my heart. For the sake of the imperial heir, Northern Yan won't dare touch you. By going, you'll actually be safer than Aining. The blood in my entire body froze instantly. So even my child had become his bargaining chip to protect his white moonlight, half a shichen later. I was forcibly shoved into a prison cart. The cold wind cut like a knife, stinging painfully against my face. On the city tower, Zhou Jinj removed his cloak and gently draped it over Jiang Ning. He didn't even turn back to glance at me once. I reached for the blood-stained peace charm in my bosom, the one he had personally put on me before the expedition. Alai, come back safely. Those words still echoed in my ears. My fingers tightened. Zhou Jinj, whether I descend to the underworld or rise to the heavens, I don't hate you. But given the chance, I will definitely kill you. Northern Yan's water dungeon was even colder than the rumors said. Filthy black water rose past my waist, with rotting straw and dead rats floating on the surface. My limbs were bound by iron chains, suspended from the torture rack. So this is Zhou Jinj woman. The first prince of Northern Yan, Tuobalai, grabbed my chin. I heard you are from a military family. Quite the tough one, aren't you? Pa. I spat a mouthful of bloody foam onto his face. Tuobalai wiped his face, let out a sinister laugh, and brought down the barbed whip in his hand viciously. A sharp crack rang out. I was whipped until my skin split and flesh tore. Salt water seeped into my wounds, the pain making my whole body convulse. I had endured 3 months in this water dungeon. The preferential treatment Zhou Jinj spoke of was 3 whippings a day and rancid slop. Because I was a daughter of the Shen family. My father and brothers had slain 3 of Tuobalai's brothers. This blood debt was now all being settled on my head. Memp. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen, as if someone was stirring inside with a blunt knife. I curled up my body, cold sweat mixing with blood as it trickled down. My child was moving. He was crying for help. Please. My voice hoarse. I begged the jailer. Give me some hot water. I beg you. The jailer kicked me right in the lower abdomen. Want water, drink piss. Intense pain exploded instantly. A warm liquid slid down my thighs, dyeing the pitch-black pool water red. Blood pools and pools of blood. No. I struggled like a madwoman, the iron chains clanking loudly, grinding my wrists down to bare white bone. That lump of flesh and blood separated from my body, slowly sinking to the bottom of the murky water. That was my child. Before even getting a glimpse of this world, it had turned into a pool of bloody water. I clutched a tiger head shoe tightly in my hand. Back in the prison, I had sewn it stitch by stitch, using torn scraps of my clothes, by the dim moonlight. The stitches were crooked and uneven, stained with mud. Now it would never wait for its owner again. Ha 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 ha. Tuobalai stood on the shore, pointing at that pool of blood and laughing. Zhou Jinj is truly ruthless, even sending his own seed as a sacrifice. I stopped struggling. My tears had run dry, leaving only dead silence in my eyes. Zhou Jinj, you said Northern Yan wouldn't dare touch the imperial heir. Look, now he has turned into water, merged with all the filth in this pool. I stuffed that tiger head shoe into the pocket close to my body, pressing it against my heart. There was only emptiness there, with wind leaking through. Hatred grew wildly like weeds, filling every crack between my bones. Zhou Jinj, if I could, I would make you taste it too. This feeling of having all your organs twisted and shredded. A year later, The army of Great Joe finally came. The war drums thundered earth-shakingly, even the walls of the water dungeon trembled. I was dragged out of the water dungeon, the sunlight so blinding I couldn't open my eyes. This past year, I had wasted away beyond recognition, not a patch of unbroken flesh on my body. Only those eyes frighteningly bright. Tuoba Lai brought me up onto the city wall. 100 meters high, the wind howled. Below was the massive Zhou army, a dark sea of soldiers, their banners blotting out the sun. The man at the front wore golden armor and a red cape, imposing and majestic. It was Zhou Jinj. Beside him, riding a white horse in tandem, was Jiang Ning. She wore a set of silver-white soft armor that, though ill-fitting, made her look delicate yet dashing. Truly a perfect couple. Tuoba Lai yanked off my outer robe. Wearing only a thin garment, I was hung outside the city wall by a coarse hemp rope. The wind rushed into my sleeves. I was like a tattered kite, swaying on the verge of falling. Zhou Jinj, Tuoba Lai pressed his blade against my neck. His voice infused with inner power, carrying across all three armies. Your empress is in my hands. Withdraw 30 Lai, hand over Jiang Ning. Or I'll throw her off from here. Dead silence fell below the wall. All eyes turned to Zhou Jinj. I was his first wife, the Empress of Great Zhou. By all rights and reason, he should save me. Zhou Jinj looked up. From this distance, I couldn't make out his expression, but I saw what he did. He turned sideways and grasped Jiang Ning's hand. Jiang Ning seemed startled and shrank further into his arms. Your Majesty. Jiang Ning's voice carried a tearful tone, though soft. It drifted into my ears with the wind. Sister has suffered. If it is for sister, a Ning is willing to be exchanged. Shut up. Zhou Jinj cut her off, his voice cold and hard. He urged his horse forward a step and looked up at the city wall. Tuoba Lai, I am the son of heaven, I will not be threatened. Shenli is a descendant of a military family. She should know what an honor it is to die for her country. All troops, heed my command. He raised his long sword high, the blade pointing straight at the sky. Attack the city. Attack the city. To avoid handing over Jiang Ning, he chose to launch an assault. Even though I was hanging on the city wall, liable to be killed by stray arrows at any moment. Even though I was his wife, Tuoba Lai was stunned, then burst into wild laughter. Good. What a heartless and ruthless emperor of Zhou. Since you don't want her, then I'll grant your wish. He swung his blade to cut the rope. Wait. Zhou Jinj suddenly took down a longbow from his horse. It was his sunset bow capable of hitting a willow leaf from 100 paces, never missing its mark. He drew the bow like a full moon. The arrowhead was aimed not at Tuoba Lai. It was me, Ali. His voice came from afar, carrying a barely perceptible tremor. You can do it, right? He was gambling. Gambling on his archery. Gambling that I could survive. But he didn't know. I am now a cripple, unable to withstand the impact of that arrow. What is more, to end this quickly, to keep Jiang Ning from falling into enemy hands, he actually aimed the arrow at me with his own hands. I looked at that arrowhead gleaming with cold light. Suddenly, I laughed. The sound of the bowstring vibrating clearly pierced through the clamor of the battlefield. The sharp arrow tore through the air, carrying a shrill whistle that ripped through the wind. I didn't dodge, nor could I. PFF to the long arrow pierced through my left shoulder. The tremendous impact sent my body swinging backward. Blood splattered in the air, staining the white inner garment red. Intense pain struck. Yet I didn't even furrow my brow. Compared to the pain in my heart, what is this little wound? The one-eyed dragon was startled by this sudden arrow and instinctively loosened his grip on the rope. My body suddenly dropped a section, held only by the hemp rope tied around my waist. Madman, Zhou Jinj. You madman. One-eyed dragon cursed. The siege engines below the city had already rammed into the gates. Siege ladders were raised and the battle cries drew near. After shooting that arrow, Zhou Jinj immediately turned his horse around, protecting Jiang Ning's horse as they retreated, commanding the army to charge. He didn't even spare me another glance. He seemed certain I would survive. Certain that I would. Like before, obediently wait for his triumphant return, waiting for him to bestow a bit of mercy. Too bad that Shenli had already died on that rainy night in the water dungeon. Used every ounce of strength to pull out the feathered arrow from my shoulder. The barbs hooked into flesh and blood, bringing out a string of blood droplets. I gripped the arrow shaft backhanded, aiming the sharp arrowhead at the hemp rope around my waist. Zhou Jinj. I stared at that golden figure receding into the distance, speaking softly. The wind was strong, but I knew he would sense it. I began cutting the rope. The hemp rope was thick, but under the sharp arrowhead, strand after strand snapped. The enemy soldiers on the city wall were too busy fending for themselves at this moment. No one noticed my movements, until the last strand of rope snapped, and my body instantly went weightless. The sound of wind from the fall howled in my ears like a grand farewell, in the second before I plunged into the abyss. Zhou Jinj seemed to sense something and whipped his head around. Across thousands of soldiers and horses, across the sky full of swirling snow. He saw me falling like a kite with its string cut. I watched his eyes widen in terror, watched his mouth gape open, watched him try to spur his horse toward me like a madman. I smiled. I mouthed the last few words to him. I will kill you. The next instant, in the moment my body became weightless, the wind howled like wailing ghosts. I fell like a withered leaf, plunging toward the bottomless moat. The river had long since frozen, hard as iron. Zhou Jinj, did you see clearly? You forced me to this. In this life, I won't be your empress, won't be your pawn. I'll be your nightmare. Bang! The ice shattered. Freezing river water instantly flooded my mouth and nose, swallowing everything. The city had fallen. The northern Yan imperial palace was engulfed in flames, lighting up half the sky, but the emperor of Great Zhou jumped into the moat. Zhou Jinj knelt on the shattered ice, his hands frantically searching through the bone-chilling water. His golden armor had long been cast aside, his dragon robe soaked through, coated with a thin layer of ice. His fingers were slashed by ice shards, dripping with blood, yet he seemed to feel nothing. Ali, where are you? He muttered to himself, his voice hoarse and broken. Come out, I won't force you anymore. I'll take you home. Your Majesty. The captain of the guards knelt on the ground. The river current is rapid and already frozen over. Her ladyship she. I am afraid. Shut up. Zhou Jinj whipped his head around, his eyes blood-red like a demon's. She is not dead. She is strong and healthy. How could she die? Find her for me. Dig 3 feet into the ground if you have to, but find her. Jiang Ning, draped in that silver-white soft armor, carefully walked over. Brother Jinj. She reached out to pull Zhou Jinj. Sister sacrificed herself for the greater good. She is a hero. Don't be like this. Your health is what matters. Slap. A resounding slap rang out. Jiang Ning was sent flying 3 jang away, half her face instantly swelling, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. She clutched her face in disbelief. Brother Jinj. Zhou Jinj slowly rose to his feet, his gaze terrifyingly cold and unfamiliar. Greater good. He walked toward Jiang Ning step by step, each step carrying a bone-chilling murderous intent. Who told me she was strong and healthy? Who said that as long as I attacked the city, she would live? It was you. He grabbed Jiang Ning by the throat and lifted her up. If it weren't to save you, why would I have sent her away? If it weren't for you, why would I have shot that arrow? Jiang Ning desperately clawed at his hand, her face turning purple, eyes rolling back. Cough, cough. That was your own choice, your own choice. Your own choice. These 5 words struck Zhou Jin's heart like a heavy hammer. His grip loosened, and Jiang Ning collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Zhou Jin staggered backward, a mouthful of black blood suddenly spraying out. BFFT. Bright red stained the snowy ground. The guards fished something out downstream. When it was presented, Zhou Jin's hands trembled so much he could barely hold it. It was a tiger head shoe, swollen from being soaked in water. The stitches were crooked and uneven, still stained with dark red bloodstains. Zhou Jin stared fixedly at that shoe. He remembered now. That day, she said she was pregnant. He said, precisely because she was pregnant, Bayan wouldn't dare touch her. Ah. Zhou Jing knelt in the snow, letting out a shrill, mournful wail. Like a wounded lone wolf, desperate and piercing. He pressed that shoe tightly against his face, tears mixed with blood rolling down. Ali, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. The wind and snow covered everything. That decisive and ruthless emperor, on this night, went mad. 3 years later, Great Zhou finally annexed Beian, doubling its territory. Zhou Jing became a hegemon in the truest sense. But he became even more violent and gloomy. Any small mistake in the palace was punishable by death. The position of empress remained vacant. That woman named Zhang Ning, though granted the title of imperial consort, was confined to the inner palace, reportedly tortured daily. One day, a neighboring country's new emperor ascended the throne and sent his empress to deliver a state letter as a gesture of goodwill. In the Golden Hall, all officials stood in solemn silence. Zhou Jing sat on the dragon throne, fiddling with a worn tiger head shoe, looking listless. Announcing the Empress of Qi requests an audience. The eunuch's shrill voice pierced the silence. The palace doors swung open, and against the light, a figure in red slowly approached. Phoenix crown and ceremonial robes, every step graceful as a blooming lotus. The woman was tall and slender, her presence no less commanding than any man's. When she drew closer and her face became clear, gasps echoed one after another throughout the hall. This, isn't this? On the high platform, the man in dragon robes dropped his wine cup onto the table with a clang, the wine spilling over the memorials. Zhou Jing trembled all over, stumbling down the imperial steps. He reached out, wanting to touch my face, yet didn't dare as if afraid I would shatter at his touch. Ali, is that you? You didn't die, you really didn't die. I stepped back, avoiding his hand. I raised my eyes, my gaze distant and detached. Your Majesty has mistaken me for someone else. A mocking smile tugged at the corner of my lips. I am the Empress of Qi, not some old acquaintance your Majesty speaks of. Zhou Jing froze in place. He looked at me, wild hope surging in the depths of his eyes. Impossible. How could there be someone so alike in this world? I wouldn't be mistaken, your eyes. Your voice, your Majesty. I interrupted him, my gaze falling on that dirty tiger head shoe by his feet, frowning in disgust. Great Zhou is a nation of propriety, yet your Majesty's Golden Hall still keeps such filthy things around. How unbecoming. Zhou Jing followed my gaze. What he treasured like a precious gem became filthy things from my mouth. His face turned deathly pale, as if someone had stabbed him hard in the heart. After the welcoming banquet ended, I happened to run into Zhou Jing in the pavilion of the Imperial Garden. He dismissed his attendants and cornered me in the pavilion. Ali, stop pretending. His eyes were bloodshot red, his voice full of anguish. I know it must be you. You hate me, want revenge on me. I'll take it all, but these 3 years I've been searching for you so desperately. I leisurely smoothed the wrinkles on my sleeve and let out a scornful laugh. Emperor Zhou's way of hitting on someone is a bit too cliché, don't you think? I looked up at him, my eyes full of contempt. My name is Liu Ruyan. My husband is the Emperor of Qi. He is young and strong, handsome and dashing, and the most devoted lover in the world. For my sake, he was willing to dismiss his entire harem and favor me alone. I slowly approached him, my finger lightly tapping on his bright yellow dragon robe. Unlike a certain Your Majesty, who for the sake of a concubine, sent his own wife to the enemy camp, and even shot her with an arrow himself. Trash. I bit down hard on the word trash. Zhou Jing's face twisted instantly, not just from humiliation, but also from jealousy. That emperor of Great Qi drove him mad with jealousy. You are lying. He grabbed my wrist, gripping so hard it felt like he wanted to crush my bones. You love me. You were willing to give up your life for me. How could you possibly fall in love with someone else? Besides, we once had a child together, didn't we? Love? I cut off his confession, my gaze cold as a blade. Zhou Jinj, stop the act. Back then when you personally drove me to a dead end for Zhang Ning's sake, why didn't you think about that child? When you shot that arrow, why didn't you think about regret? I did that to save you, Zhou Jinj roared. That arrow avoided your vitals. If you had just held on a little longer, I could have rescued you. Hold on, I laughed until tears nearly spilled out. I held on when rats gnawed at me in the water dungeon. I held on when that kick made me miscarry. But Zhou Jinj, it was you who severed my last thread of perseverance with your own hands. Zhou Jinj was shaken by the hatred in my eyes and staggered backward. But he quickly rushed forward again, a crazed light flickering in his eyes. I don't believe it. I don't believe you've really forgotten me. You have a birthmark on your body and an arrow scar on your left shoulder. One look and I'll know, as he spoke. He actually disregarded his imperial dignity and reached out to tear at my collar. Rap. The sound of brocade tearing was especially piercing in the silent imperial garden. My collar was torn open, revealing a large expanse of snow-white skin. Zhou Jinj's movements froze. His gaze was fixed dead on my left chest. There the birthmark he knew so well was gone. I seemed to have heard some kind of joke. Zhou Jinj, people change. Especially those who've died once. Besides, I leaned close to his ear, my breath soft as orchids. That Shenli, didn't you already kill her with your own hands? Zhou Jin's pupils shook violently, and the strength in his hands loosened somewhat. Seizing the opportunity, I yanked my hand free and backhanded him with a slap. The crisp sound of the slap echoed through the night. Zhou Jin's head was knocked to the side, and 5 fingerprints quickly appeared on his face. I leisurely straightened my collar and looked at him coldly. Is this what your majesty is looking for? I pointed at the scar on my chest, pressing closer step by step. This is thanks to you. That arrow didn't kill me. But when I fell, the rotting wood at the riverbed showed no mercy. Every rainy day, this scar aches deep in my bones, reminding me to slice your flesh off piece by piece and wash it down with wine. Zhou Jinj fell to his knees with a thud. He covered his face, tears streaming down. Like a helpless child. Ali, I am sorry, I didn't know. I thought that arrow missed your vital spots, I thought. You thought? I looked down at him from above, like looking at a dog. You thought I was made of iron. You thought I couldn't feel pain, Zhou Jin. Belated affection is cheaper than dirt. Does your majesty only understand this now? I turned to leave. Zhou Jin grabbed onto my legs. Don't go. Ali. I'll give you the empire, I'll give you my life. Don't go. I stopped and looked back at him. A cruel smile curled at the corner of my lips. Want to atone? Fine. Then deal with everyone who hurt me back then. One by one. Clean them all up. Maybe when I am in a good mood, I'll spare you another glance. Jiang Ning couldn't sit still the moment she heard the news of my resurrection. Even under house arrest, she still bribed the guards and barged into my chambers. Shen Li, you bitch. Why don't you just die? Her hair was disheveled, looking like a madwoman. Holding a pair of scissors, she rushed at me to stab me. I stood there without moving an inch. The guard behind me kicked her flying. Jiang Ning fell to the ground, the scissors slipping from her hand. She immediately switched to a different face, clutching her stomach and wailing. Tears coming on command. Your Majesty, sister is trying to kill me. Save me. This trick she had used countless times, and it never failed. Too bad the audience had changed. Zhou Jinj rushed over upon hearing the news. Seeing this scene, he didn't even ask for an explanation. He walked straight up to Jiang Ning and stomped on her hand. Ah! The sound of bones cracking accompanied her screams. Still acting. Zhou Jin's voice was ice cold. Ning, I am tired of your act. I sat in the grand chair casually sipping tea. Since little sister loves acting so much, big sister will help raise the stakes. I clapped my hands. The guards presented a stack of secret letters. I flung the letters at Zhou Jing's face. Take a good look at what kind of trash your white moonlight really is. Zhou Jinj picked up the letters with trembling hands. The more he read, the darker his face became. That was the correspondence between Zhang Ning and Tuoba Lai of Northern Yan. As early as 3 years ago, she had already been a spy for Northern Yan. The so-called going as a hostage was actually going to claim credit. She sold out Great Zhou's defense maps, causing Great Zhou to lose soldiers and generals. Even me being sent as a hostage was a scheme she single-handedly orchestrated, so that is how it was. Zhou Jing gripped the letter, his knuckles turning white. So I've always been a fool, toyed with in the palm of your hand. He suddenly looked at Zhang Ning, murderous intent boiling in his eyes. You deceived me so cruelly, you killed my child. You killed a Li. Seeing that things were exposed, Zhang Ning stopped pretending. She lay prostrate on the ground, laughing maniacally. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Jinj. You are the stupid one. You are the coward clinging to life. If you truly loved Shen Li, how could you bear to send her to die? Don't push all the blame on me. You are the one who shot that arrow with your own hands. These words completely shattered Zhou Jinj. He slumped to the ground as if all his strength had been drained. I walked up to Zhang Ning. I grabbed her by the hair and dragged her to the edge of the lotus pond. Since your body is weak, you should soak in cold water more. You'll get better with practice. With that, I pressed her head down and shoved it hard into the water. Glub glub glub. Zhang Ning struggled desperately. Bubbles churning. I watched her suffering in the water, not a ripple of emotion in my heart. This was just the interest. Zhang Ning didn't die. I had someone fish her out. Dying would be too easy for her. Your Majesty. I took a handkerchief from the guard and wiped my hands. What punishment does this despicable traitor, who colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country, deserve according to the laws of the Great Zhou dynasty? Zhou Jinj looked at me, his eyes hollow. Do with her as you please. I smiled, since she likes Northern Yan so much, likes men so much. Then send her to the military camp to serve as a camp whore, to comfort the troops. Oh right, I heard Northern Yan used to have a punishment called human swine. If she doesn't serve them well, turn her into a human swine and put her on display at the camp gate. Zhang Ning's eyes widened in terror. No, please no, Brother Jinj, save me. It is me, Aining, Shen Li, you vicious woman. You'll die a horrible death. Zhou Jinj turned around, his back facing her. Take her away. 3 words and Zhang Ning was sentenced to death. The shrill, agonizing screams gradually faded into the distance. Zhou Jinj stood in place, his back hunched, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. He looked at me, pleading in his eyes. A lie, I've done everything you asked. Can you forgive me? I walked up to him. I reached out and straightened his disheveled collar. The gesture was gentle, like a lover's caress. Zhou Jinj was overwhelmed, tears threatening to fall again. Forgive, I said softly. Your Majesty, the show has only just begun. That night, flames lit up the sky above the palace. It wasn't a fire, it was a coup. The army of Qi had long been lying in ambush outside the city, and the commander of the imperial guards inside the palace was the escape route my father and brothers had left for me. My return this time was never about delivering a state letter. I came to destroy a nation. In the Great Hall, Zhou Jinj watched as I walked in. Clad in armor, sword in hand, bodies lay scattered all around. Several generals stood behind me, bowing respectfully. So, Zhou Jinj let out a bitter laugh and slumped onto the dragon throne. So this was your true purpose. You came for my life, for my kingdom. I ascended the imperial steps, one by one. The tip of my sword scraped across the floor tiles, making a piercing grating sound. Zhou Jinj, your kingdom was won by the Shen family for you in the first place. Now, I am simply taking it back. Ali, he looked at me, his eyes surprisingly calm. If it means dying by your hand, I accept it willingly. He closed his eyes and bared his neck for the blade. Slash! The sword flashed. and blood splattered. Joe Ginge let out a miserable scream, clutching his wrist as he collapsed to the ground. His hand tendons had been severed. Immediately after, 3 more sword strikes followed. Leg tendons, dantian, crippling his martial arts, crippling his ability to move. But I didn't kill him. I sheathed my sword and looked down at him from above, lying there like a puddle of mud. Die, you wish. Death would end everything so easily. How could that compare to the suffering of staying alive? I had someone craft a cage of pure gold. It was placed in Fengyi Palace, where I once lived. Joe Ginge was locked inside, with all 4 limbs crippled. He could only lie prostrate like a dog. I had someone deliver medicine to him every day. It was a specially made pregnancy-stabilizing medicine. Once swallowed, it would cause gut-wrenching abdominal pain, like a woman in labor, or like the agony of a miscarriage. I wanted him to experience, day and night, the pain I once endured. Ah, heart-wrenching screams came from inside the cage. Joe Ginge was rolling on the ground in agony, his head smashing against the golden bars, blood streaming down. Kill me. A lie. I beg you, kill me. I sat outside the cage, peeling grapes while admiring his miserable state. Your Majesty, I brewed this medicine with my own hands. You must drink every drop, not one left behind. He was delirious from the pain, yet still calling out my name. A lie, I was wrong. I really did love you, love. I tossed the grape skin into the cage. Your love was sending me to the enemy, shooting an arrow at me. Joe Ginge, stop insulting that word. The great Joe fell. Its territory was absorbed into chi. Spring warmed and flowers bloomed. Grass grew tall and orioles flew. The day I went to see Joe Ginge one last time was the 3rd of March. He had completely lost his mind. His hair had turned gray and white, his appearance withered and haggard. He clutched the blackened tiger head shoe tightly in his arms, grinning foolishly at the air. Ollie, look. The baby is moving. Ali, why haven't you come back to eat yet? Seeing me come in, his clouded eyes lit up for a moment. He crawled to the edge of the cage and reached out his bony hand. Who are you? Have you seen my Allie? She said she went to buy candied hawthorns. Why hasn't she come back? I crouched down, looking at this man who was once so insufferably arrogant. Now, he was just a pitiful madman. But there wasn't a shred of pity in my heart. She won't be coming back. I said flatly, she is dead, killed by your own hands. Joe Ginge froze. Then he clutched his head and let out a beast-like wail. No, she is not dead. She was healthy and strong. She can't be dead. Liars, you are all liars. I stood up, no longer looking at him. I turned and walked outside. Kill me, please, kill me. His desperate cries came from behind me. I stopped in my tracks, without looking back. The day I left the kingdom of Joe was a bright sunny day. Spring was warm with flowers blooming. Willow catkins drifting through the air. The Emperor of Qi came personally to receive me. He rode a tall stallion, his smile radiant, reaching out his hand to me. Ali, let's go home. I grasped his warm, broad palm and swung myself onto the horse. I glanced back at that towering palace, red walls, yellow tiles, still as majestic as ever. But inside, a madman was locked away, along with a past too painful to look back on. What are you looking at? He asked. Nothing. I withdrew my gaze, just watching a play that has already ended. The wind lifted the hem of my clothes, flapping loudly. I touched the scar over my heart. It was still there, but it no longer hurt. That Shen Li who wept in despair in the water dungeon. That Shen Li whose heart had turned to ashes on the city walls. Had ultimately died in that winter after all. And the me now. Ahead is my beloved, behind me is freedom. Hoofbeats shatter trampling through this long nightmare. I face the wind, laughing wild and free. Spring has finally come.